So this next part here for chapter 4, part 2, is where I'm going to talk about one of the most important phrases in the novel. And it's right here. Of course, I've highlighted it. You can't escape it. It's the word annihilation. And I really like the way that they have the narrator do it in the audiobook. It kind of sounds like this: annihilation, annihilation, annihilation. The word seemed more meaningless the more she repeated it, like the cry of a bird with a broken wing. In other words, she's saying that she's weak and powerless at this point. Although, as we're about to see, when the psychologist talks to the biologist, she still has some sense of power, or so she thinks. It's just me, the biologist. Just you. Just, oh gosh, just you. And later on, she says on page 125, she's like, didn't like your company, didn't like what you've become. A chill came over me, uncanny. I'm the same as always. The psychologist's gaze drifted out to sea again. I saw you, coming down the trail toward the lighthouse. That's how I knew for sure you had changed. Changed? Metamorphosized? In what kind of way has she evolved or changed herself and adapted? You were aflame, she said. I had a brief vision of my brightness made manifest. By the way, this is very interesting because later in the chapter she's going to reveal that she's been like this and knew it all along, but didn't say anything to the reader. Otherwise, people would be like, whoa, I don't think you're the same person at all. You were a flame scorching my gaze, a flame drifting across the salt flats, through the ruined village. A slow burning flame, a will-o'-the-wisp, floating across the marsh. And here's where she starts to get all crazy with the language, because the word floating always indicates that she's trying to hypnotize someone. Floating across the marsh and the dunes, floating and floating, like nothing human, but something free and floating. From the shift in her tone, I recognized that even now she was trying to hypnotize me. It won't work, I said. I'm immune to hypnosis now. Of course you are. You were always difficult. Was that an odd sense of pride in her voice? But, she continues, why didn't you shoot me dead as I approached? An unintentional leer swiveled her head to stare at me, unable to control all the muscles in her face. So physically, she's not powerful enough, but mentally, she's still going to fight with the biologist. My hand wouldn't let me pull the trigger. And she kind of explains what happens later, but that's not too important. What was important is that she talks to the biologist in a way that says, a coughing fit, words dribbling out of the edges. I never saw it, because she said she felt something around her. And again, people feel this all the time, especially if you walk home late at night and you're not sure really where you are or where you're going. And if it's completely dark, you're always thinking something might be behind you. Gut instinct is usually right. I never saw it. It was never there. What is this it? Or I saw it too many times. It was inside me. Inside you. I was trying to get away from what's inside me. That doesn't make much sense. But in the next paragraph, the need for control shows up yet again as a theme in this novel. I interpreted the frenzy of her disassociation as a part of a need for control. She had lost control of the expedition, and so she had to find someone or something to blame her failure on, no matter how improbable. But we find out later it was just a reaction. And then she asks her a bunch of questions. And it's very interesting that the psychologist refuses to give her an answer on so many things. And halfway down page 128, what does the border look like? I'll tell you when I get there. What really happens when we cross over, not what you might expect. Tell me! I felt as if I were getting lost. Again. There was a gleam in her eye that I did not like. That promised damage. In other words, she's still in control because she knows things that the biologist does not up to this point. She says, I want you to think about something. You might be immune to hypnosis. You might. But what about the veil already in place? What if I remove that veil so you could access your own memories of crossing the border? Would you like that, little flame? Would you like that, or would you go mad? If you try to do anything to me, I'll kill you. The thought of hypnosis in general and the conditioning behind it have been difficult, an invasive price to be paid for return access to Area X. How many of your memories do you think are implanted, the psychologist said? How many of your memories of the world beyond the border are verifiable? Interesting. So it's indicated that perhaps some of the things that happened in her past may have not happened in her past. They want her to think that's what happened in the past. But she says, I'm sure of my past. Let's stick to your own hallucinations. Describe the crawler to me. There are things you must see with your own eyes. You might get closer, you might become more familiar to it. Her lack of regard for the anthropologist's fate was hideous, but so was mine. And again, the word more familiar is very uncanny. What did you hide from us? Too general of a question. What do the black boxes measure? My favorite. Nothing. They don't measure anything. It's just a psychological ploy to keep the expedition calm. No red light, no danger. What is the secret behind the tower? The tunnel? If we knew, do you think we would keep sending in expeditions? They're scared. And she says the border is advancing a little more each year. So, the most important thing from this whole conversation is one, the biologist thinks she has control to this point, but she's going to be sort of second fiddle in this part, in this conversation. But after this, she is going to take complete control. And that's why later in this chapter, she admits to everything, right? She admits to not telling the whole truth. She admits to not saying things that she should have said but omitted anyway because she wanted the reader to kind of follow along. But now she's the leader. Now that she's the only one left after she kills the surveyor, then it becomes okay, what's next? Now that she has control, what are we, the readers, supposed to believe about that? How is she being characterized? And how is the psychologist being characterized in this moment? Okay, so in this next part, we are going to talk about some very interesting things with our little favorite friend, the surveyor. We love the surveyor, but the surveyor won't be around for much longer. So that'll be the next part. Thank you.